Hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alex Mason. I'm a podcaster. I'm a podcast host, basically. And I've been doing this for about 5 years. Today, I have with me Mr. Glenn Rudin. He's known as the Message Master. For over 25 years, Mr. Glenn has been, a high energy sales and marketing consultant and a coach. He specializes in messaging and branding, both in verbal and in non-verbal way. He helps clients create breakthrough messages so that they are clearly understood in their respective markets. Mr. Glenn is also passionate about speaking. He's a public speaker, and he regularly delivers keynote and workshops, and one popular one he's known for is, "Would you do business with you?" In his session, he discussed various ways, you can do business in a more effective way. And he does this in universities, libraries, chambers of commerce, and national conventions. He recently wrote and released his first book, A Brand in Your Hand. It is predicted, oh, sorry, my bad. It is predicated on helping companies in their branding and messaging. Mr. Glenn also learned sales and marketing crafts, working for Fortune 500 companies like Revlon, Shiseido, Cosmetics, and many more. He has also helped so many other companies develop their branding strategy. During his career as a sales professional, he has sold to giant companies around the world, including Walmart, Target, CVS, Walgreens, Disney, Universal Studios, NBA, and many more. And one interesting thing about Mr. Glenn is he regularly attends trade shows around the world, sourcing products and helping companies with their trade shows and messages. Mr. Glenn, thank you for coming to my podcast again.
Alex, how can I thank you enough for having me on your show? You're a professional at this, and for someone like me to get the opportunity to be and appear on a podcast with you is a pleasure and an honor to be here. And thanks for that warm introduction. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. So, Mr. Glenn, because of time, I would really like to keep our conversation very brief. And to start with, I think your penultimate post, I saw something very interesting. Your post was astronomically, hypothesized in a phenomenal way that, is predicated on appearance. And you said that in 8 seconds, more than 17 emails are being sent around the world, more than 22 million Google searches have been made, and over 3.3 thousand likes happens on Facebook. I was curious how you got these numbers.
Well, what's interesting about those numbers is they probably need to be updated, and those numbers are probably astronomically higher now than they were. If you actually just go ahead and do the research on Google and ask on a Google search, how many, and fill in the blank of these things happen in a minute around the world, you'd be astonished at the real information that actually comes back from the Google search that is really legitimate in terms of all these things that are going on. We have to keep in mind, let's just even look at a platform like LinkedIn, Alex, that's got over 700 million users. And at any one point in time, how many individuals are up on there and commenting on posts or posting their own or looking over posts that are coming through? And it's just never ending. And what I was trying to do when I made that slide and I put that comment into my "Would you do business with you" presentation, my keynote, is to give people the sense for how they have got to be ready as soon as the camera is on. The moment that I come into your presence, Alex, I've got to be ready, because before you and I even had a chance to speak with one another, you said to me, "Oh wow, you're dressed sharply for this." that was the first thing that came to your mind, and it was probably within the first few seconds that you and I interacted earlier today. It was before I said hi. It was before you and I had any banter back and forth with one another. So in just those 8 seconds, I've either made a positive impression on you, which I hope I did, or a negative impression on you, which I hope I didn't. But the idea of all those statistics is to give everybody the sense for how quickly all these things are happening in our world.
Interesting. You also talked about the elevator pitch. I had a podcast with a young man called Abdul Malik on my podcast some time ago. And we talked a little bit about elevator pitch. And then he told me, he gave me his version of elevator pitch. But, I mean, going over that question again might be rhetorical, but what is your most ideal way of giving an elevator pitch? How do you start it?
Well, it's a great question. And I will tell you, Alex, that I'm going to say 90% of the people that I come in contact with, either in person here where I live in the New York area, or virtually on Zoom calls, literally around the world at this point, thanks to apps like Zoom, 9 out of 10 people, 90%, are not adequately prepared to do their elevator pitches. So for starters, there's preparation. You've got to have a sense for what you're trying to communicate before you do your pitch. Most people just show up and they wing it, and it's painfully obvious. So when I teach elevator pitch to my students or my private clients, I like to teach them to start their pitches in one of two ways. Either one, with a question, or two, with a fact. With either of these, there's a greater chance of getting your audience immediately engaged in what you're speaking about. For instance, again, when I do my pitch, I will automatically open up with, hey, Alex, did you know that 9 out of 10 or 90% of the people I come in contact with struggle with some portion of their messaging? That's the bad news. The good news is that when I work with people like that, I'm really able to help them overcome their obstacles and create great pitches. So that's using a fact. Hey, Alex, did you know that 90%? Now, what that does is it immediately draws people who struggle with their elevator pitch in, because I'm letting them know they're not alone. I'm letting them know I've done research on the topic, and they're getting a chance to think, gee, this guy has really thought about this. So the other way I can do it is I can phrase it by saying, did you know? It's a little bit less threatening. Did you know that 90% of the people I come in contact with struggle with their pitch? Now, when you and I are doing an interview like this, it's a great opening for you to say, wow, Glenn, I had no idea the number was that high. But again, the idea is I really want to pull you in. You're not necessarily going to raise your hand and say, hey, Glenn, that's me. I struggle with my pitch. But deep down inside, if you know you do struggle with that, you're going to find me at some point later and say, I heard what you said about that, and I'm afraid to say I'm in that group. So my advice to my students, the people who hear me speak so passionately about this topic, is find a question or a fact that relates back to your subject matter so that your audience really feels like you're resonating with them, that you understand their pain point, and that you're coming to it from a very confident place where you know you can help them solve it. I hope that answers your question.
Interesting. Really interesting. So I was about to ask you how to know the right time to speak. If you have the opportunity, how to know how you can tell the right time to speak. But I think your answers, had some of that embedded in them, and I think that's logical enough. Now, do you have all this in your book?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I don't know how well that'll show up here or not, but I'll just hold it up quickly. So that's my book, A Brand in Your Hand. It's a hardback, full color book on branding and messaging. I'll try to pull, just a little imagery in there so you can see the great color images in this book. What makes this book really, really unique, Alex, is that I took the time to write all of the tips and information in a brand in your hand in rhymes. I found in my studies that we human beings have a tendency to remember things easier, to absorb them more quickly when they're written in rhyming patterns. So, if I said something to you like roses are red, violets are blue, sugar is sweet, and so are you, I don't remember how young I was when I learned that, but because of the rhyming nature of it, it has stuck with me all these years. So my hope is that on topics like branding and messaging and elevator pitch and nonverbal branding and audience, that you can pick up a copy of a brand in your hand. It's up on Amazon digitally, or you can order a hardcover copy that also comes with a journal and some great charts that you can fill in. But the hope is that a lot of people who need help in a lot of these areas, a lot of the young people just getting out of school who've never been exposed to things like branding and messaging, that they will easily be able to read up on topics that are interesting to them. And then if they want to really dig deeper into it, they can go to the library. They can get, a 300 page book on the history of branding, from Procter and Gamble right through Facebook, and all the companies that are doing all of their marketing today. But the idea of a brand in your hand is to quickly introduce topics like elevator pitch and give you the basics, so that if you don't know anything about them or you haven't been refreshed on them in a long time, it's a great, easy way to absorb these principles, the things that I'm so passionate about. So I'm glad you asked me about it. I think a lot of your followers and watchers will find this really interesting for them.
Interesting. It's really a nice book. I like the colors.
Very colorful, and my inspiration really was Dr. Seuss. I am a huge Dr. Seuss fan. Those books were read to me when I was little. I read them to my kids when they were growing up, and I love them today for their creativity, for their colorfulness, and for our ability to just pick them up and get joy out of them. So for me, the challenge was, could I create something that was really fun, but also had a practical business sense to it? And that was really the idea behind a brand in your hand, to create these wonderful sing-songy rhymes. Let's see if I can give you a quick, really quick example here. So this is going to be a little rhyme about your non-verbal personal branding. So this is branding that gets done without you even speaking. It's the first impression that you make. So the passage goes like this. Nonverbal branding is done without a word. When it is not in balance, you may look absurd. Your posture, your clothes, and of course, how you speak should make you a person we will want to seek. So that's one little rhyme in there in the nonverbal personal branding section of the book. And, here's the one of the images that goes along with that. So, we've always heard as children, you can't judge a book by its cover. And yet, if you can see in this image, it's actually, it's a book animated to be a person. And then you've got the audience holding up their ratings there. They're judging this person just based on their cover. The idea being, the way we dress, the way we appear matters, because we immediately, again, in this 8 seconds or less, start jumping to these conclusions about people, about whether or not we want to interact with them, about whether or not they've got fact sets that we want to hear about. And I'll give you one other really quick tip that I really believe strongly in on elevator pitching. Alex, a lot of people make this mistake. They will start their elevator pitch out by saying, "Hi, I'm Glenn Rudin. I own a company called Always Been Creative. And what I say is right now, stop, irrelevant. Who I am does not matter. The name of my company does not matter. Do I have content that you're interested in? Because if I do, and I do a good enough job with my pitch in the intro, and you want to hear more about it, there's always time for you to say, by the way, what's the name of your company? What's your website? What's your name? How do I get in touch with you? But if I don't start that pitch off and get you interested right out of the gate, thinking this is something you want to hear more about, you're never, ever, ever going to get to it if I start with my name and my company name, because you're going to stop paying attention. Because for the most part, those things just don't matter until I've convinced you that there's some value I can provide you with that you're only going to get by getting in touch with me.
Thank you very much. I like your articulated response and approach to those questions. And, you know, I've seen series of your videos on your Instagram. And, you know, I think all of these are being explained, but hearing you, you know, telling me this in such a way, I think it's you know, well, it just reiterate the reason why, you know, one, having to understand the usefulness of their grooming and their appearance can be very relevant, and why we all have to pay attention to how we groom and how we interact with people. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah. Well, look, you know, it all comes down to, you know, this is a big word that I started using in 2022. And the word is intentionality. Intentionality, Alex, in this way. We need to be intentional with what our personal brand is. We need to be intentional with what the value we're going to deliver to the people who hear us speak is. And if we don't think about these things ahead of time, in other words, if we're not intentional about what we do, then every time we show up, it's a different story. And when we're not consistent, then people start to have a tendency to wonder, wait, you know, last time he showed up, he was wearing a Beatles t-shirt. This time he showed up and he's wearing, you know, a soccer jersey. Next time he's going to show up wearing a suit. Who is the real Glenn Rudin? And I find that with people, it's very similar. That when you're not intentional, you know, for me, you know, my branding is pretty spot on. I'm really super enthusiastic, really passionate about these topics that I speak about. I practice what I preach. You'll never find me doing a Zoom call or a live meeting like this without a minimum of a button-down shirt and a sport jacket on. If I'm doing my presentation live in front of an audience, depending on the audience, a tie will be included or not, depends on whether or not that's appropriate. But I am always on my brand message, and I practice what I preach, the things that I'm so passionate about. And what I find is a lot of people are not. They're not intentional about that. They're not well practiced at it. And so very often you'll see them showing up in all different ways, shapes, and sizes. And we never know what the authentic person is. And so the brand erodes, the personal brand erodes. And then if you're speaking for a company brand and those two don't line up, the personal brand lining up with the corporate brand, you create dissonance for us. There's a disconnect. And now you're relying on us to put the pieces together and make them make sense for you. And I find that that's a really ineffective way of communicating who you are and what you're really all about. The clearer you are, the better chance the person listening will understand you. And even if they're not a customer, they will know enough about you based on that interaction. Say, you know what? I'm not Glenn's customer, but man, I know somebody who is. They just graduated from college and they need help with figuring out their personal pitch. Or they've just left the corporate 9-to-5 and they want to start their own brand, their own company. They don't know which way to turn. So if my message resonates well enough, which I think it does, with anybody who's hearing it, even if they're not a potential client, they may know somebody who is. And that's why it's so important to be super consistent. And again, I'll go back to that word, super intentional about how you want to appear to other people.
Well said. Well said. So how long did it take you to write your book?
The book took me a little over a year, and it's an interesting story. I went to a seminar about 2 years ago, and the woman who was speaking, I was speaking at this seminar. I was doing my Would You Do Business With You seminar, but I was following her. So she started, and her presentation was how to write a tip book. And I said, wow, that sounds really interesting. Maybe I'll take my speech and I'll turn it into a tip book. And I started doing that. I did the outline, I put it down on paper, I created 52 tips based on my keynote address that I do. And then I said, my name of my company, which, again, we said earlier is not appropriate, but now maybe it is called Always Been Creative. Always Been Creative. And I said, how am I going to be creative if I'm just going to take my speech and reduce it to paper? That's not all that creative. What can I do that would be more creative? And I started getting this idea, I don't think anybody does business books that rhyme. Maybe I can become the Dr. Seuss for adults. And I've got other books that are, partially written now, 70% written. And I'm waiting to see what kind of reaction I get from the business community on a book that has really important concepts that rhymes. And that's what a brand in your hand is. So, long answer to your question, it took me a little over a year. But you can imagine, Alex, the challenge of not only putting good content down that will help people understand elevator pitch and audience and messaging, but writing it in rhymes that actually follow the content. So it wasn't just the content, it was now rhymes about the content that put the two together. And finding a great illustrator who could help me translate the images that I had in black and white into the beautiful, colorful drawings that you see in a brand in your hand.
That sounds like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. And, what I will say is, as a creative guy, I get up early every day. I'm up at, for me, it's early, 4:50. And I'm usually at my desk around 5:30. And that's when I feel my most creative. And I would say to myself every day, you've got to write 4 verses today. You've got to write 6 verses today. You've got to write 3 verses today. And that was my challenge over time, to get them all down, work with a couple of different editors, looking them over. This one doesn't rhyme as well. Maybe there's a better word that you could use here. But it is hard. Writing a book is hard. And so what I'll say to anybody is, you can't write it in a day, but you can write it in 3 months or 6 months. But you've got to be dedicated to doing a portion of it every single day.
See. So are you getting feedbacks? I mean, you have readers, and you hearing anything from anyone about using your book yet?
I am. I'm frustrated that I'm not seeing more reviews, frankly, up on Amazon. But the few that are up there now are really positive. And some people that I wasn't even expecting, friends, contacts that I wasn't really even expecting to look at the book or acknowledge it or read it, have read it, and they've had great feedback for me. They love the creativity. They love the rhyming nature. They love how fun and colorful it is. And I'm thrilled with that. I really am. I am super passionate about helping people. And I feel that right now, this is up on Amazon, the digital download for $2.99 US. So I feel that for anybody in the world, regardless of where you're from, can afford to download this and pick up all these principles that I am so passionate about. And I'd love to hear feedback from any of them, anywhere, at any time.
Great. Wonderful. I just had one of my followers said, great message. That means your message must have resonated, and that means your book is for someone out there. The question is, what age demographics is your book predicated on? How can I put it? Who's your book made for?
Well, that's a great question. When I originally wrote the book, here's what I was thinking. I don't know about you, Alex, but I can speak for myself. When I went to college, I really didn't know what the classic cliche, what do you want to be when you grow up? I
Hmm.
really didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I'm not sure I've grown up yet. But what I will say is that had somebody put some of this knowledge in front of me, some of these thoughts and ideas, I think there'd be a much better chance at me reaching where I really wanted to end up than just having it happen by happenstance and life. In other words, I feel that most of us, if we're lucky enough to go to university, we graduate and we more or less end up getting tossed out into the ocean of life. And
Hmm.
I feel like we bob along for a while and then we wash ashore someplace. We get out of the water and we look left and right and say, how did I get here? What am I going to do now that I'm here? And there's not a lot of, again, I'll go back to this word, of intentionality about it. And so I feel like this book was originally written for college students to give them a much better sense of self, how to communicate about themselves, to give them a better idea about how important communication and messaging is, that the number one way you will get ahead in the world is when people understand your ideas and your thoughts. And the only way to do that is to be a good communicator. And a lot of the essentials of being a good communicator you'll find in my book. But interestingly enough, once the book was written, I realized that with the great transition due to COVID-19 around the world, with people exiting jobs, with people getting sick and tired of the 9 to 5 grind, of all the people watching shows like Shark Tank who have dreams about brands and ideas and products of their own, that this book is not just for college students. Nope. This book is for anybody who potentially has a dream about a product. And again, I'll go to the back cover. Did you ever think about creating a brand? Well, maybe you've got it right there in your hand. If the answer is yes, then please read this book. I think you'll be happy you gave it a look. So whether it's a brand that is a product, whether it's a brand that is a service, or whether it is the brand that is you, Alex, or me, this is a book that will help you enhance that branding and quickly understand the key concepts that you need to address so that your brand, so that even if you're the brand, you've got a much better chance of understanding the concepts and succeeding yourself sooner than later because you're going to be intentional about it.
Interesting. Wow. So you basically had the presupposition that your book was gonna help young college students, but it ended up becoming useful due to the transition of the COVID-19. It became useful to both those in the corporate field and those in the business world, right?
Right. Well, think about how many people you and I have heard and continue to hear on social media apps like the one we're on today, Instagram, or Clubhouse, or TikTok, or even LinkedIn, that have product ideas. I think the advent of Shark Tank here in the States anyway, which is probably in its, 13th or 14th season maybe, gave every single person who ever dreamed about having their own product, their own company, their own idea, the idea that, hey, maybe if that person can do it, maybe I can do it. And so the idea behind this book was, what if somebody gave you a quick heads up about all these different things that you really need to be considering before you come out with this brand? So this book does talk about messaging. It does talk about branding. It does talk about audience. It does talk about messaging, about elevator pitch. And again, is it the deepest, most thought-provoking book you could possibly get on branding or elevator pitch? Probably not. There's probably something else in your local library or on Amazon that's deeper and thicker and more in depth. But I'm going to say there's not going to be a funner ride along the way to thinking about your brand and how to introduce you and it to the world than a brand in your hand.
I see. So, I mean, since the use of the book is transforming, it's been a transformative process having the book written or designed for young college students, but now it's useful for those who are uh, who are in the business world or who are not in that class, in the social class. Have you ever thought of probably modifying or creating a different version for those not in college?
Well, as I said, originally the concept for me was about college students, and it still is. But when I then took a step back and said, wait a minute, this is really much bigger than just college students. Because again, anybody with a dream of creating their own product, their own company, wanting to be an entrepreneur, this is a great book to get you launched and to get you into all of the concepts that you're going to need to familiarize yourself with in order to be successful at what you're doing. Now, you're going to read the chapter on, for instance, elevator pitch. Is that going to teach you every last bit about elevator pitch, how to create one, how to perform one? No, you're probably going to need a coach like me or somebody else that specializes in messaging like that can help you. But again, as a for instance, for your elevator pitch, I must persist. In just half a minute, please give us the gist of what you are offering and why it's so good. When you say it succinctly, it will be understood. Now, the chapter on elevator pitch is probably about 14 verses like that get into all different ways, for crafting and coming up with clever ways of doing your elevator pitch. But that's what's great about it. You could just take an afternoon and say, I'm going to go through Glenn's book, A Brand in Your Hand, and just the elevator pitch section. And I'm going to follow his concepts here. And by the time you're done, you will have a much better sense about how to create, develop, and perform an elevator pitch that resonates with your potential customers. The other great thing about my book, I've included journal pages in the back of the book so you can keep track of your branding ideas, your thoughts, your elevator pitch, your message, your mission statement, all along the way, who your audience is, and all of that. So again, is it still a great book for someone graduating from college? No question. But is it also great for anybody who's ready to leave 9-to-5 corporate America? No doubt. Is it great for somebody who's still working in their corporate job, but says, hey, you know what? I want to start a side hustle for myself. I want to create my own brand. Absolutely. Is it great for somebody who's not as professional and polished as you, who wants to start their own, podcast? Absolutely. There are tips in here which will also get them in a better place after reading than before.
Wow. That's a lot. So your book sounds like a good product. It sounds like a good product. The question is, since you are in the branding business and marketing business, just wanted to ask you this. How do you tell a good product?
How do you sell?
How do you tell a product is a good product?
Oh, how do you tell if it's a good product?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the internet, listen, this is always interesting, right? How can you tell if a product is a good product or not? For starters, look, you can go to Amazon, to the site for my specific product, and you can read a few more chapters, a few more verses of my book and get the sense, is this something that's going to help you? Is this something that's fun but enlightening, and you're going to get something really good out of it? That's a great way on this particular book. But on products in general, the whole key there is really crystal clear communication on value. Mm. So what's the value that I'm giving when somebody buys my book? In a short period of time, you will be brought up to speed or you will have your eyes opened on a number of topics that if you're somebody who is in the business of wanting to start your own product or brand or business, you will now be immersed in all the different topics that you've got to think long and hard about. So in that case, there's great value being provided. So, for the hardcover book, that's $24.99 US. And again, it's hardcover, full color. It's a great value because even if you just develop your elevator pitch as a result of my book, even if you just work on your personal brand as a result of my book, that's invaluable to you in terms of your communication to the world. It's a very minor investment to make in you to help you be a better person than what you are now in terms of your branding and messaging. But how do I know if a product is really a good value in the long run, right? Is the iPhone that you and I are speaking on right now, is that a good value? Ultimately, what am I getting out of that? I'm getting the ability to now speak to you in Washington, D.C. on a high definition screen with great sound. This is going to get recorded. It's going to get disseminated out to your universe, part of my universe. So is this product a great value? In my judgment, it is. It's expensive, but over the long haul, it delivers my ability to communicate with the world. For me, that's invaluable. So anytime, I'm not an endorsement for them, but I drive a Subaru Forester. What's the value there? For me, I want a car that's reliable, that's safe, that can get me through, inclement weather when I need to, but it's comfortable enough and it's good looking enough that I'm happy in it. That's a great value to me, right? So it's really, for me, a question of what's the ultimate value that a product is going to deliver for its audience, and can you price it in such a way that someone doesn't really have to think so long and hard about whether or not it's right for them. That, for me, is how you determine a really good value in a product and whether it's going to be a good seller or not.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. So, I was looking to start a new business, and, I had a friend said, go trademark it. Go trademark your business. Go trademark your brand. What do you know about trademarking?
About trade market?
Yeah, trademarking. Yeah, right.
I'm not sure I understand. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I understand the question, Alex.
A friend of mine.
Trademarking.
Yeah, right.
Trademarking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Trademarking is incredibly important.
Mm-hmm.
If one of the things that a lot of inventors, and again, I've been working in product development, as you mentioned in my introduction earlier. I've been in product development now for 30 plus years. And one of the mistakes that people make very often is, they're afraid to speak to other people about their product, that someone's going to steal the product or the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And trademarking, copywriting, and patents are all very, very important in terms of protecting your intellectual property. But you have to understand this. Getting the trademark, getting the patent, getting the registration is really the start of the process, not the end. Because if someone comes along and decides they want to copy what you're doing, you've got to be able to afford to pay an attorney to get them to stop. So very often people get hung up in this, and they're afraid to put something out in the world because they don't have the patent or they don't have the trademark yet. And it is really, really important to have. But the most important thing to have is a great idea. Now, if you and I were going to have a one-on-one consultation and I didn't know you and I didn't trust you because I didn't know you, not because you're not a trustworthy person, but I just don't know you, mm-hmm. I'd want to put a piece of paper down, a non-disclosure or a non-compete piece of paper that, as a good business partner, you would be willing to sign. And at least that tells me that you're somebody who understands what the relationship is and that potentially I'm providing you with something of value. my idea, my intellectual property, and that you're not going to run off and try to take that from me because you signed an agreement that says, for the next 3 or 4 years, I'm not going to do anything with this idea other than try to help you, Glenn. So the trademarking, the patenting, the legal paperwork is really important because it is a first line of defense, which says to the world, wait a minute, this person is not a rookie. They at least understand the paperwork process. Maybe I should find somebody else that I might want to think about stealing an idea from if you're somebody who steals ideas. I'd like to think that there are not a lot of people out there that do that, but you and I know better. So the trademarking is important. The patent process is important. But you do need to be able to talk about your idea with other people before that official paperwork gets issued. And the way you do that is by handing them a non-disclosure, agreement where someone will, in writing, say, I won't talk about your product with anybody but you unless you give me permission to. So great question. Trademarks, very, very important.
Well, thank you for the information. Some people need this information. I can tell you. Some people have ideas and they never trademark their business, their brand. They just use it that way. And it's risky. It's risky. Thank you for showing up on my podcast. So when I was going through your bio, I saw that you are a consultant, and that basically means individuals can reach out to you, and also corporate bodies can reach out to you for help, with things like this, right?
Yes. Look, I specialize in helping companies and individuals improve their communications through their messaging, through their personal branding, through their brands, through their elevator pitch, on their websites, everywhere along the way where there's an opportunity for you to make an impression on somebody in writing or verbally. I can work with you and I can help you improve the way you do that from what you're doing now to what you should be doing, and then even helping you create your elevator pitch, helping you create your keynote, helping you create your PowerPoint presentation so that you can resonate with the audience that you need to resonate with. I love helping people go from point A to B, C, D, E, and F along the way, seeing the improvement, seeing the change in confidence where somebody didn't really have an idea about what their message was. Now they do, and helping people really understand the importance of being able to communicate it in a really comfortable, confident way so that you are your best you. And it's funny, one of the things that I really stress for people when they do their elevator pitch is they've got to stand up. You have to stand up. If you're with me and I'm coaching you on your elevator pitch and you get the opportunity to speak, you've got to stand up to do your pitch. So 2 Fridays ago, I did a live presentation out here in Long Island, outside of New York, where I live. And at the end of my presentation, I said, now does everybody around the room want to introduce themselves to us? And sure enough, the first person who went to speak, sitting down, couldn't really understand. I said, no, stop, stand up, start again. Everybody who's going to do their pitch now is, at least when I'm around, is going to stand up, because that's you putting your absolute best effort out there. I always like to think of it this way. It's interesting. If you think of your elevator pitch like a Broadway show performance, or it doesn't even have to be Broadway, it could be, in DC, at the theaters, anywhere. Mm-hmm. You need to have your script. That's your elevator pitch. You need to prepare it ahead of time. It needs to be scripted. And just like any good actor, you need to know your lines. Mm-hmm. There's going to be an audience. Now, right now, I'm looking right at you, but I know there's other people who are watching your live podcast. So there's an audience out there, and they want to know that you're well rehearsed, you're well practiced. And finally, so, in a sense, you're on stage. And last but not least, you should be in costume. You and I covered that all the way at the top when we first started speaking. You need to be dressed in your proper costume so that when you show up on stage and you perform your lines, your audience is not distracted by your appearance. It all works together as one unified package and one great communication about you. So think of it the next time you're doing your pitch as your 30-minute on Broadway presentation. And, you know, we want a standing ovation, of course.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Well said. So if individuals or, you know, corporate bodies want to reach out to you, how can they reach out to you?
Simple. You can just go to my website, alwaysbeencreative.com. Right on my homepage, there's a link to set up a free 30-minute Zoom meeting with me. There's no charge for that. It's just you and I getting to know one another, creating a deeper connection for each other. And I welcome anybody who can hear this to go ahead and do that. So alwaysbeencreative.com. The other way is here on Instagram, Glenn_Rudin_message_master. You can find me here. Very active every day on LinkedIn, and I answer all of my personal messages, my DMs that I get. And finally, find me on LinkedIn. Very active there as well. I'm posting my own original content every week, but I'm also always up on anybody that follows and connects with me. They know that I'm up there and I'm active, and you can always send a connection request to me, and you can be sure that not only is it going to be accepted, but you're going to get a personal note from me asking you to connect with me on a deeper level so we can really get to know one another. So I'm out there. I'm very reachable. So if you're a company or an individual and you need help with branding, messaging, or product development, I hope you'll reach out.
Right, right. I hope those who need the help will reach out. Yeah. Thank you very much for making this time, to have this conversation with me. I really appreciate this. And I'll be, looking to, invite you some other time so we can have more conversation and talk more about things like this.
Listen, I look forward to deepening our connection with one another, because there's so much about you that I don't know that I want to get to know. I want to hear your message. And beside this great podcast that you do, I want to hear about all the different stuff that you did. I want to hear about your background, because listen, the key to me in business is you cannot have enough connections, people who really know you, really understand your passion and, the value that you bring to the world. And listen, I love meeting people. I'm so thrilled that someone created Zoom, that someone created Clubhouse, so that I can interact with people all over the country, all over the world at a very difficult time. But listen, even if not the pandemic, the ability for me to have a meeting with somebody in the UK or on the African continent or in India now is just one little Zoom connection away. Mm-hmm. And so I'm thrilled about that. I'm thrilled to have gotten to meet you in that way. And for anybody out there who doubts the power of networking, think twice. There are a million great connections for you out there. Take the time, get to know these people. Don't just follow, create a connection. It's so, so important. And let me tell you something. The speech that I gave 2 weeks ago was through a network contact that I had who couldn't do the speech themselves. That guy recommended me. As a result of my doing that, there's a company now that's going to hire me to come in and do messaging and branding and elevator pitch for first their key executives and then for their entire sales team. So don't kid yourself. All of this stuff works. You just have to be providing value to the people that you know so that they in turn can provide value to you. And that's the way the world works. Keep paying it forward, keep helping people, and you'd be surprised at how many people will turn around and do the same for you.
Right, right. Well said. Well said. Like someone said that people only do business with people they know and trust. So that solidifies the reason why we all need to network. We all need to get to know people, more people, because we can't get to the top alone. So we need to, we need to touch stones along the way. And the stones are the people we meet and collaborate with and find a way to do stuff with them and businesses with them to grow. And I've observed that some people, I've observed that some people don't want to collaborate. And this is why I tell young people, when you meet someone you are looking up to and you offer a help to them and they don't reciprocate, let them go.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. I think there's a big misconception that, even for somebody else who works in the branding environment that I work in, there's a big world out there, Alex, right? I mean, there's a lot of business and there's a lot of businesses and individuals who need help. And just because I collaborate with you, it does not mean that now you're going to steal my customers and I'm not going to be able to do business. There is so much out there for all of us. It's an abundant world. Don't think small, think big. Provide other people with value. Give somebody else a leg up. Help somebody else. Pull that thorn out of somebody else's paw, and you will make a friend for life. And you'll feel good yourself because you're doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to touch a little bit on what I said, and I wanted to see what you think about it. I've had some young people telling me the reason why they don't reach out to some people for help is because some individuals, who are probably higher in the socio-economic class, they tend to act like they're untouchable, and they don't tend to reciprocate. When you meet someone and you expose your network to that person, but the person is refusing to expose their network to you, that sounds like the person isn't reciprocating. What do you think should be done in such a situation?
Well, listen, there are always going to be individuals who, sometimes for no fault of their own, they're busy. I don't expect Richard Branson to answer my personal phone calls. He's probably a pretty busy guy and might not have the time to exchange ideas and thoughts with me. But that doesn't mean that there are not a whole lot of other creative people who can add to the framework of what I'm trying to accomplish and can't help me. And by the same token, for me, not every single person that I come in contact with needs to hold out money in order to have a conversation with me. Mm. I think that, again, in order to be exposed, let's say, to your network, Alex, you and I have to have a good connection. You have to feel good and comfortable about me, that I'm a good person, that I'm going to do the right things, that I'm going to represent you in a professional way when I meet somebody else that you introduce me to. Mm. And to me, that's what keeps the system going. Because if I want to introduce you to somebody that I know, I want to feel the same way about you, that I know you, that I like you, that I can trust you, and that I'm never going to have a problem when I put you in touch with somebody in my network. That's how it all works at its best. And that's why I say, I don't ever, there's so many times that someone will book a 30-minute free get to know you call or a free message master call with me. And I know the instant that call starts, that this person is not necessarily going to be able to afford me or not necessarily going to have the money to pay me. But I still pour the same amount of passion and enthusiasm into them, into their business, into their ideas, into their website, as if they were paying me $5,000 an hour. I just truly believe in paying it forward into the world that way. I wish more people were like that. I wish more people understood that. But to me, that's what makes the world go round. And if you come across somebody who's not willing to do that, even though they may have value for you, well, sometimes that just goes under the it's too bad file, and you have to move on and find somebody like you, Alex, that's interested, or me that's interested in really helping out.
Mm. Powerful. Yeah, I think that's a very good way to end our conversation today. I'm an artistic student of poems, riddles, and quotes, words like that, And one of my favorite is, out of the night that covers me black as a pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fair clutch of circumstance, I have no wings or quite aloud. Under the blood and inch of chance, my head is bloody, but unbowed. Beyond this wrath and tears looms but the hover of the shades. And yet, the menace of the years shall find me unafraid. Your mothers know how straight the gate, I'll charge the punishment is cruel. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Do you have words like that, riddles or, poems that resonate with you?
Well, listen, I would say that the most impactful poem in my life that my mom, who's no longer with us, gave me when I was about 13 or 14 years old, is the famous poem called "If" by Rudyard Kipling. Now it was written back in the day. If you were a man, but I think that that it still resonates today, more than it ever did. And if you can force yourself to keep going when others have quit, if you can deal with liars and fakers and kings and common people and treat them all the same. I'm paraphrasing from the poem, but if you don't know the poem "If" by Rudyard Kipling, I strongly advise. I wish I was more prepared with that today, because I'd love to read a paragraph or two from it, but I don't have it right here in front of me, unfortunately.
Okay, it's fine. I guess the next time we have a conversation, you'll have it with you.
I will
do that on my podcast before I conclude my podcast. Because I love literal works like that. So I try to see if there's something else I can learn from someone else. But now you talked about "If," I'll go look it up.
Yeah, and I think you'll find. I think any of your listeners will find tremendous inspiration in that poem. Stuck with me all these years.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Glenn. I really enjoyed the conversation, learning on your branding and marketing techniques, and seeing how you deal with some not really problem, but situations, and how you conceptualize the elevator pitch. It's really it's astronomically awesome. I would say I really like, and you talked about, I'm still trying to to catch up with your hypothesis when you talked about the 8 seconds, how 17 million emails are being sent around the world and 21 million Google searches have been made. That alone is something that really caught my attention. And it only takes someone who has to do some work and some studies to be able to come up with stats like that. They can be precise, or they can be educated at the same moment. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah. Look, I'll leave you with this. We all get one chance to make a great first impression on the people we come in contact with. So be intentional about who you are, and be intentional about the message that you want to give off about yourself, so that you give yourself the very best chance of succeeding with whoever your particular audience is. Yes, you need to be great in 8 seconds or less, great in 8 in my mind, but it's not just my mind. We as human beings have short attention spans, and we're constantly being distracted by shiny objects all throughout our day. So when you get the chance to be in front of people that you need to remember you, be great in 8, be intentional about your messaging, and you'll never look back or regret it.
Thank you for coming to my podcast, Mr. Glenn.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a thrill to be here with you, and I really enjoyed our conversation.
You have a good day.
You too. Thank you.